Hello and welcome back to the OnlyAccies podcast. In today's episode, we'll be looking back at Hamilton's unbelievable championship opener against Raith Rovers. We'll also be looking ahead to our next match against Greenock Morton. To discuss that, as well as many other topics, joining David, Brandon and myself is a man off the telly. It's Joel Sked. Joel, how are you doing, mate? You all right?
Yes, very well. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Pleasure having you, man. First of all, how does it feel to have football back? You're able to go watch your mighty Hearts again.
Yeah, it's good. It's so I've been fortunate during last season. Just with my job, I was able to get to quite a few Hearts games. I think I got to about 20, I think, which was great. But the game on Saturday was the first I've been to with a decent amount of, with any fans at Tynecastle actually for 16, nearly 17 months. And what a difference, honestly. Even though it was 5,000, it sounded so much more. It was just even the build up, the hour before, just sitting in the stand, and it was great. Even there was a couple of thousand in, but there was just this buzz, this atmosphere that was, I think, it was just even more pronounced just because of the fact that we went for a season with just the music and crowd noise, which was just rubbish.
So, what do you think? Back-to-back championships then?
No, I'll be happy with avoiding the championship again. So I'll take top six consolidation. No, I'll be. I think we should be pushing for. We should be aiming for top four, but maybe second if Celtic continue their ways.
You'll be no stranger to Accies fans because you kind of became the unofficial celebrity voice of Hamilton fans last season after standing up for us. I mean, what can you tell us about that? Because it was good for us to see. You know, what was it like for you?
It wasn't really by design. I've not got any leanings to Accies. It was just a couple of things that really annoyed me. First, I think the main one was certain club officials and the manager made comments about the fans. I just felt there was a real lack of understanding, empathy, even with regards to fan expectation, and I didn't think you were treated as you should have been during what's a difficult time for a football supporter. I mean, Rice having a go at fans about making comments on social media. I mean, how else are you meant to express yourself when you can't go to games? Then and then kind of on the back of that, I don't know if it was, I don't know if Maitland went as far as that, but certainly pundits within the media, it's almost kind of patronising fans and kind of what can you expect from Hamilton? I mean, not getting beat 8-0 for a start, that's just the basics of any fans. Like, they want better than that, and it's I just think it's really poor when folk look down on fans who I always find know better than most. And I mean, it was just frustrating to hear, and that's basically why I picked up on it and wanted to back up Accies and the fans especially.
Did it become a bit annoying at times though when you had Accies fans mention you in practically every tweet, trying to get you to stick up for them?
Yeah, it was funny. I had to get a few people in DMs and just messaging me and keeping me in threads. It was amusing. It was good to know though. It was good to know that what was going on and to get that insight, because I might not have seen it otherwise. So rather than being annoying, I found it amusing, and I always like to think I am, even though my position as a journalist, a reporter on the TV, my mind is always supporter first, fan first, rather than professional, which probably I think my bosses would probably like the other way around. But no, I think we all got into this because you're football fans, and I do think players, pundits, journalists, managers, I think they kind of forget it. A large portion will forget it and forget what it's like to be an actual football fan, and that kind of the irrational views from time to time. And I am very, very irrational.
Something we've always wondered on here is, how are Hamilton viewed from the outside, from a neutral point of view, somebody who's not a fan of us? How are Hamilton as a club viewed both on and off the pitch? Can you fill us in on that a little bit?
I think there's a certain element of Accies are seen as, certainly Premiership clubs, I think a lot of fans, like speaking to mates, have a different view to a lot of my mates. Accies are seen as not a Premiership club. I mean, the stadium, the surface, the supporter base. I like the stadium. I like the fact that it's quite a unique stadium. I like the fact that I think one of the last times was there was a fan kind of sat in the gazebo bit beside the along the other side of the pitch. I like that. I couldn't care less about artificial surfaces. I don't mind them at all. And then I'm like, so what if crowds aren't massive? I mean, the majority of clubs in Scotland, crowds aren't massive. So I do think there is a certain element is that when Accies were in the Premiership, it was almost like, what the fuck are you doing here? Get back to where you belong. And it's always hard to. It's always when people say where they belong. It's like you belong where you are in the table. It's like people say, "Oh, the league's better with a strong Hearts or stronger United." Well, you have to be good enough to actually be in that league. So I do think Accies probably one of the teams out of the 42 who have probably the worst rep, just because I think they put a few noses out of joint in the Premiership.
Looking back again on last season, where do you think it went wrong for Hamilton? So this is the first time in 7 years that we've actually been relegated and we've kind of held on in the Premiership. Where do you think it went wrong for Accies last season?
I'm actually interested to hear your guys' view on it. But for me, I thought certainly at the start of the season they were far too negative. I was watching Accies and seeing such a passive team who were so uninspiring to watch. So God knows how you guys and fans felt watching it. I'm guessing a lot of suffering. It didn't look like Accies wanted to control the game or like even try to control the game or engage the opposition to try and put them under pressure. Of course, over the course of the season, injuries hurt, and that's where the degree of sympathy I have for Brian Rice. But the way I view Accies from that time in the Premiership is they should be a nightmare to play against. They should be battling. They should make it uncomfortable. Like New Douglas should be a really difficult, awkward place to go. And for too much of last season, I really, really didn't see enough of that. It was only probably a spell where Bruce Anderson came in, played up front with Ogdenpo, of course, when he played up from Marius, and really got in teams' faces again and battled and made it uncomfortable. But it just seemed like too long they were really negative. I remember looking at the start of this, for a long period of the league, looking at stats in terms of possession, shots, touches in opposition box, long passes, passes that went basically like pass success rate. Accies were so low or so poor in all of them, and it just at least if you're going to go down with a bit of kind of gumption, a bit of just having a go. And it seemed like it was too late, or there was too short a period that happened.
I mean, you briefly touched on it at the start there. You mentioned Brian Rice. Obviously, you and the boys and the view always talk about Chipper's a good lad. From the outset, that's what we sort of see on a regular basis. We're told to sort of have our pie and eat it sort of thing. Chipper's a good lad. How did that sort of meme come about?
I think it's because you hear it so much elsewhere. I mean, Rice, obviously within he's worked with Hibs, Falkirk, Inverness, so he's got a lot of and he's worked with so many players, so he's got a lot of people he's worked with who are within the media, and of course, fair enough, they're going to back him up. They're going to talk about how good the coach is. So it was kind of just it was a parody of that, especially when Hamilton were getting criticised, but it never really, from the outside, it never really fell onto Rice, that criticism. And I thought he was very tetchy at times in the media, and I never think that's a good look. I think you can, as a manager, you can be you can question or can have a debate with journalists, but it was just like the tone came across, and I just didn't think it was a good look. But he never got pulled up in it, and we are always trying to be fair, a view from the terrace. So we will look at the different side. What Joel said there, I think, is spot on. A lot of the blame didn't fall on Rice at times. We tried to be as critical as we could, but as fair as we could. What was it specifically, do you think, last season that he fell short? And we talked about game management a lot during it.
For me, I think the last year it was really, we played the cards we were dealt, but it's more like we played the cards we were chosen. I mean, this is something we went over many times on here. I don't think Hamilton, in the 7 years we've been in the top flight, had made the most of the opportunity. It's easy for me to see this. I don't know the ins and outs, but it's down to recruitment. When you get promoted, you have a better calibre of player available to you, and it's something that we really never explored. When you look at teams like Livy and the players that they've brought in over the years, make pre-contract transfers. I mean, that's probably the reason we were in the state we're in, is we wait until the summer unfolds and go with what's left. I mean, look at us now. We're in the same predicament now. So I think it's just we never looked to establish ourselves as a Premier League team. I mean, the example I've always said to you guys is how long you're in a job before your boss says to you, right, you're doing what you're doing, but you need to start aiming higher, do a wee bit more. We were always happy to just survive and no more. So I always think it was going to unfold that way, that we were dealing with ourselves off the park.
And I mean, you've touched on sort of recruitment there, and going back to sort of last season, recruitment-wise, we brought in a player that I think you couldn't speak any highly of last season, Joel, and Hakeem Odoffin. Obviously, he's left now. He left for Rotherham yesterday. How good was he to watch last season? I know we were extremely poor, but what did you like about watching Hakeem last season?
Yeah, Odoffin was easily one of my favourite players to watch last season. Just that all action style, his performance against Motherwell. What was the when he's won? And I think it was was it the 4-1 game?
4-1.
Yeah, pulled it as a Dan.
Yes,
in the middle of the park.
The 4-1 game in February, it was one of the best individual performances of the season in the Premiership. In my view, he was just absolutely everywhere, and I just liked his all action style. I really like a player who can break up play so well. I think a team like Hamilton, you need that. Just the nature of the league. He reads the game like really, really well. It's like when the ball breaks or there's a loose ball in midfield, he'll be there. Interceptions wise, he'll be there. His flexibility, his athleticism, just everything there to be a really combative and productive, effective screening midfielder. And he showed against Motherwell that he's more than that with his ability on the ball as well. He's a safe passer. He's just like the ideal defensive midfielder. And unfortunately, Rotherham have signed him. I was hoping if he was going to leave Hamilton, then he would have stayed in Scotland.
Somebody Hearts would have been looking at. Do you reckon you'd have taken him at Hearts?
Oh yeah, I would have absolutely taken him at Hearts. Obviously, we've signed this boy from Everton who has some similar traits, but no, Odoffin would have been high up my list and kind of priority and first choice. How much
a miss do you think he'll be for Accies this season? Obviously, in the Championship,
you seen it on Saturday. Watched the game today, and the midfield for large parts was absolutely non-existent. The way that Lewis Vaughan was just able to constantly pick up space and just dry out the defence, Odoffin would have made sure that wouldn't happen. You would have been as well playing Odoffin there on his own rather than the two that did play there on Saturday. He would have got through more work and been more effective. So I do think that It'll be a huge miss, although I think we will speak about the links to Mikko Virtanen as well. So he'd possibly fill that role.
And just before we go in to do something a little bit different, you watched a lot more Championship football than we did last season, obviously supporting Hearts. Can you give us a quick rundown? What can Accies expect this season? What kind of league are we going into?
It's a mental league is one of the best ways to put it. I thought going into this season that I thought Kilmarnock were set up to run away with it. Signings that Dunfermline have made been pretty good, so that's kind of made me question it. And then Kelly did look comfortable against Ayr United, but it's a tricky league. Hearts found that where it was some really difficult places to go. Hearts should have done a lot better in some instances, but no, I think it's especially with grounds opening up again. I think it's a really exciting division to be in, because you look at it and you just think there are a game every game is every away game is a decent away day. It's fun. There'll be, like we've seen at the opening weekend of the season, there's just going to be loads of goals, and there's going to be a lot of excitement. Different challenges as well, because I think Queen of this, even though there's quite a few artificial surfaces, as you guys will know, a lot of artificial surfaces are different. So there's different challenges, and I do think after the last 7 seasons in the Premiership, okay, no one wants to get relegated, but there's a bit of excitement. I found that when we went down the Championship first time in 2014, that there's just a wee bit of excitement, something new.
And before we go on to talk more about Accies in depth, Brandon and David are going to fire some topics at you. And if you could give us your best and worst in the Championship of these topics, that'd be great. Brandon, I'll hand over to you, mate. Okay,
so what's the best and worst ground to visit in the Championship?
Best. This was hard, because I think there's a lot of really good grounds in there. So worst, I have only been there once as a fan, and that was Morton, and it was Capello, and I really want to go back because I think it's a cracking ground. But I was stuck in the main stand. I went to see Morton and Cowdenbeath, and stuck in the main stand, so the view wasn't great. But that's the only reason I had to choose them as worst, because there was a lot of great grounds. The best, Palmerston. It's Queen of the South, Palmerston. I think it's a cracking. It's just a cracking lower league ground where you've got Terrace on either side, and an old main stand, and then some seating. So it's just the identical ground to visit. It's a cracking away day as well.
Any standout pubs come to mind in the Championship?
PJ Malloy's in Dunfermline, so it's more of a music bar. Last time I was there, I was to see, they're called Mick Fleetwood, so they're Fleetwood Mac tribute band. It was great, and the last time I was there for football was the Hearts game, and they kind of opened up they had some music on, put songs on, and it's just sells tenants, sells great rum. It's just a great atmosphere. So I would fully recommend PG Malloy's.
Any that are sort of bear pit pubs to avoid?
I love all sorts of pubs. The only ones I would avoid is any Wetherspoons.
Best places to go for scran in the Championship that come to your mind?
Arbroath. I've had a few, not just cracking pies, but different food at Gayfield. So I'll probably go with them. Decent sweet selection from what I can remember as well. In terms of worst, I always find Kelly pies are overrated.
I'd agree with that.
What about fan bases? So any kind of fans that could be atmosphere or numbers, something that sticks out?
You might have experienced this on Saturday. Raith Rovers, they can be very, very booey. I do like a support who can boo. So I'll stick them for best. There's, in terms of worst, out of the league, there's nothing that really stands out. I do like Kelly's chant about Ayr United having won fuck all and never will. So there's another shout for them.
This season, or even last season, who do you think the best player in the league will be this year? Sorry, we'll go for this year.
Might not be the best, but the one I love watching, the one I always look out for is Kai Kennedy. So he's signed on loan for Dunfermline from Rangers. He was really enjoyed watching him at Inverness on his day. Just so exciting. He's low centre of gravity, can go either way, 2-footed, can create, can score. Probably needs to do a bit more kind of end product for Dunfermline this season. So I'm curious to see how we get on under Peter Grant. If you're going to ask me the worst, I'm going to stick with Dunfermline, and I'll go for. He's probably not the worst player in the Championship, but as someone I've never rated, and it's the goalkeeper Owen Fon Williams.
Oh, you know him well. Here,
I believe that he frequented your way.
He was known as Buffon Williams with our support, sarcastically, obviously.
Yes, he is. Up until a few years ago, I always thought it was obvious that a goalkeeper could be described as being a good shot stopper. But over the last few years, I've found that not to be the case. Fon Williams falls into that category. Barkas falls into that category. Joe Pereira falls into that category. So yeah, it's he's never been one. He's never been one that I thought was a great goalkeeper.
Last one is, what about memory of last season? Or something that really made you love the Championship?
I was going to say ending because it was a slog. Probably beating Dundee 6-2. There's probably something. Right, I'll go for. There's two. So beating Dundee 6-2, just because I just thought it was a great advert for the Championship. With the starting the league season with that, the whole drama around what happened during the summer, kind of the narrative, and it was just an exciting game, which. It was a game that he could get away with without any fans. Then on the flip side, I know we got beat 3-2 by Queen of the South, but it was an absolute bonkers game, and it was funny. It was the winning goal was an Andy Irvine own goal, and it was just a ridiculous own goal. And before the game, Hearts fans were protesting, so there were just loads of drama.
Fantastic. And to focus back onto Hamilton this season, what do you make of Aki's signings so far? We've spoke about it a lot already. People like Kieran McDonald have already stood out to us. You got some players who might not feature as much, people like Matthew Shields. What have you made of Aki's transfer business so far?
I would hope that for Aki's sake that there's going to be more to come. I was unsure on Andy Ryan. I think he's always had a decent reputation. But I'm always unsure of the step up of two divisions. So he's gone from Stirling last season in League Two, came up to Aki, and obviously you know him well from a previous spell. I was unsure of him, and then obviously at the weekend he made a brilliant impact, scored a brilliant goal, but it was more his all-round play. You could see how instantly he was an upgrade on Callum Smith, who's now left, and David Moyle. Kieran McDonald it interests me because he was excellent for Rafe last season, but then I question why he was brought in when you've got Scott McCann, who I like, and Brian Easton, and I think Easton's more a centre-back now, but McCann was, I thought, one of the more underrated players in the Premiership last season just because of how productive he was going forward, how much he was involved in a lot of Aki's goals and how effective he was from that left back position. Again, he came on Saturday and played further up the pitch, which is interesting. But again, he made a positive impact. So there is a couple of interesting signs, but obviously there's definitely work to be done.
Yep.
Obviously, you're saying what needs to be done, and I think every single Accies fan will agree with you there. Where do you think the most importantly we're lacking? And
watching on Saturday, within 3 minutes, I was like, well, Accies needs a right back because Ben Sterling is absolutely not a right back, and there's probably a player in there. I know he's probably had a difficult time since he came from Hibs to Accies, but I mean he's not been helped by playing at right back because he looks uncomfortable. A couple of times with Lewis Smith drifting inside, and you want him to go around, and you just don't feel he's comfortable in that position. So right back, big one for me. Again, probably a couple of options in midfield. I think the midfield options at the moment are quite uninspiring. I think you need more craft in there. You saw Saturday was frustrating because not only were being overrun and had nothing defensively, you saw the difference with Rafe and their ability to play through the lines. With I think it was Spencer and Tate behind Vaughan, and for Accies it was just didn't really seem to. They were disorganised in defence, but also disorganised attacking wise. Before Templeton came on, Andy Ryan came on and gave a bit more direction. They didn't really seem to. It was almost just guess when he got on the ball in the final third. So someone who can control the midfield, put his foot on the ball, look up and get the ball to Templeton in the final third, get the ball to Lewis Smith in the final third. And I suppose Callum Smith, as we mentioned earlier with Miko Vertane, and someone to replace Odoffin. And you're always love Templeton, but you're always cautious about relying upon him. Callum Smith's away, so one or two attackers.
Obviously, you mentioned one or two attackers, a right back and sort of midfield player. We'll talk in Vertane in a moment, but is there any suggestions or any players realistically you can think in the top of your head could possibly suit Accies and Accies could realistically go for?
Yes. So starter right back, I would. The first one that came off my head was Cammy Logan at Hearts. He's recovering from a back injury. I think Nielsen sees him as a backup to Michael Smith in the wing back position. But I mean, Nielsen has mentioned how much a loan spell and playing 40 games rather than 4 games would be beneficial. So that would be a potential option. Also, Cammy Ballantyne at Montrose. I think he's one of the best right backs, certainly in the League One, League Two. He would provide a lot of physicality, a lot of thrust. Midfield, I think there's quite a few in the Premiership who you could look to as loan deals. Josh Campbell, he's been used actually by Jack Ross so far this season. He's came off the bench, but he played for Edinburgh City last season. He has the ability to make a difference in the final third. He's got a great long shot on him. And then there's Keegan Jacobs from Livingston. The way their transfer business this season, they've signed a lot of players who can play centre midfield, a lot of left backs. So I would just wonder if how much he'll get a look in at Livy this season. He would provide plenty of experience and cover in the centre of the pitch. Attacking options, I love Chris Mockery at Dundee United. Not sure how much he'll get a look in. And then Declan McDade at Dundee. I think there's been rumours that he could potentially be away. A potential a loan signing. He can play. I think he can play either side. I think he's more of a championship player. I can't see him making too much of an impact in the Premiership. Fantastic.
And one of the names we've mentioned a few times already, Miko Vitruman. It looks as if that deal's pretty much done. It seems close anyway. What did you make of him when you saw him playing for Arbroath? He's had a spell and a half. He got recalled, obviously, by Aberdeen. So, what did you see of him? What kind of player could Accies possibly be getting there?
Defensive, solidity in midfield. He's a big guy. He's a physical presence. He didn't stand out to me last season. I think he only played 9 games before he was recalled by Aberdeen. He played twice against Hearts. I think the first game when we won 0, he was a bit more influential. I like him because he provides a bit of height in the midfield. So when the ball does go long, he can cover the centre backs. He can play in front of the centre backs, and he gives you an additional. You've seen it with was it one of the goals? Yeah, it was a 4th goal for Rafe where Jamie Hamilton got caught under the ball, and I think he was coming in behind Regan Mimnaugh. He shouted, whereas for Tannen, he would he's the type of player who would clear that. Safety on the ball. So yeah, I think he's someone who would be reliable in midfield. He'd be a safe option, and he's been proven there as well. Because I think maybe didn't have the impact he wanted last season with Arbroath, but certainly the season before, he was very highly thought of.
Yep. David, it's somebody that I know you're excited to try and get him involved. I know you've been looking into him a little bit as well since that rumour popped up.
Yeah, we had a wee discussion last night when we were prepping for the podcast. So I had a wee look on Twitter just to get kind of fans' opinion. That's kind of something I like to do when we do have players linked, because 9 times out of 10 they are usually unknown names for ourselves, just for the type of players we deal with. But no, there was some positive ones even from Aberdeen fans, to be fair. So obviously he might not have it in him just now to make an impact in Pataudry, but he sounds like he could be a really effective player in the Championship, already has proven to be so. So no, I'm excited. I mean, the thing that I'll always say, that will obviously be new for Joel, is we always say as Accies fans, whoever stands out for Hamilton, 9 times out of 10 it'll be someone we don't expect. So Hakeem Odoffin was the biggest example of that. He brought him in as a right back. I don't think anyone thought he was going to be our best defensive midfielder, maybe one of the best in the bottom half of the SPL last season. So, like I say, I think the guy's got the potential to fill the void, because when we were talking about Hakeem previously, I think Brian Rice maybe should be given credit for the type of player he's turned into, because Gogic, in our opinion, took a step up in his last season with us under Brian Rice, and then it was the same again with Hakeem Odoffin. So maybe that's the type of player that he can really help excel. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would back that up, and this is where I think Rice does deserve credit. I think he is, like, on the training ground, I think he is a very, very good one-to-one coach, or when it comes to improving players on the training ground. It's I'm just really interested to see how Rice does this season in terms of building a squad, improving it, and working on the young players. Because I think on the training ground, I think he's a very very good coach, and that's what I think was more frustrating last season, when that you could see he's obviously picked out Odoffin, made him into this really effective midfield screener, and then there was times during the season, there was towards just before the split, where you thought everything was starting to click for Hamilton. It was starting to click under Rice. I mean, it was a run of maybe 5 games unbeaten, but there was just quite a few draws in there. But he saw potential there, and then it just didn't quite kind of kick on into the split. So Rice has shown with like Odoffin wee glimpses of him being a good manager. So I think really this season is going to be really interesting.
I think to touch on that point as well, in Rice's tenure with us, he's never really had every player being available to him on the training pitch. I don't know what our injury issue is, but we tend to always have a very long injury list. And the period you touched on there, when we went to sort of 5-6 game unbeaten, is probably when we had most players available to us. So it could be the case that when he does have those players available and those players on the training pitch, and he is able to sort of give them the time of day, and he is able to implement what he wants, then there obviously is something in there. You hear all the time about how he's such this great coach, and he wouldn't have the sort of career in the coaching and the sort of second in charge that he's had. But hopefully Accies just sort of keep players available, keep players fit, and because the sort of changing mentality is that Accies should be one of the top teams rather than one of the bottom teams, that we'll see a change in Rice's philosophy. Something
we can guarantee will happen this season is Accies will give young players a chance. It's something that we preach every single season. You know, we've seen the likes of Jamie Hamilton and Lewis Smith that we cannot speak more highly of on this podcast and have done before. And you got a chance to see somebody like Marley Redfern impress against Wraith Rovers on Saturday there. So wondering if there are any kind of players that are coming through there, or that have came through, the Accies youth ranks that are in the team now, Joel, that stand out to you that you're excited to see. You know, is it going to be another season of the incredible Jamie Hamilton?
I think Smith is... Lewis Smith, you've got a few Smiths. Lewis Smith is the one for me. I think he showed flashes against Wraith, and it was certainly the first 15 minutes that just coming into that left on that left side. he can be really, really dangerous. I think Championship is great for him to get that grounding, especially being out injured for a wee while, to get ground and get a run of games, maybe work on his kind of physicality to be ready for whether it is taking Hamilton up to the Premiership next season or potentially a move. I think getting potentially 40 games this season is massive. Same for Jamie Hamilton. And speaking to a few people, there's sense that he's probably the highest rated of all the young players coming through, and you can see it. It's like he wants to play with the ball, which is good, but he also can do the bread and butter stuff. I do think he's still raw. You seen it with the Zanata goal the weekend. Far too easy to let him inside on his right foot when you kind of knew that's where Zanata was wanting to go. But again, I think having dropped down from the Premiership, playing in the defence every week, if Rice can get a settled defence, whether he plays alongside Want or the experienced Easton, that'll help him massively. In terms of others, Marley Redfern, just because I was there for the Kilmarnock game, I think when he got his debut at the end of last season, so it was interesting to see how much he'll play this season. George Stanger has always interested me, just because of the nature of his background. Never really stood out on the pitch, and wonder if Kyle Monroe's another one who's potentially interesting, just because what position is he? He seems to go from centre forward to left back, which is mental.
Yeah, I mean, we played him up front against Albion Rovers, and then in the course of that game, he started as striker. He then moved to left wing. He was then moved to left wing back, and then moved to a left back. So, as you said, he's one of the players. He's a utility player at the moment, I think, is the best way to describe Kyle Monroe.
Obviously, we've touched on quite a few of the sort of bigger names of the youth product, or the academy as we like to call them. But there is a good few other players which have had their chance in the Premiership, and they've not really been seen to sort of make the step up and be the level which sort of Jamie Hamilton, Lewis Smith have been. Do you think players like your Regan Mimnos, I don't know, even Sean Want, he's a bit older now, but Ronan Hughes, do you think the drop down to the Championship might be at a lot more? Obviously it will be, but do you think it'll make them come out their shell a bit more? Because obviously they've not had the opportunity to play at a lower level, so they've been thrown in the deep end as such, so they've not had that sort of opportunity to perhaps maybe express themselves fully and show what they perhaps are capable of straight away.
Yeah, definitely, especially Mimno, because a technically good player. It's difficult with Accies in the Premiership. I mentioned it earlier on. Didn't have a lot of the ball last season, so it's hard for a player like him when he's not seen a lot of the ball to express himself, like you said. So I think it'll be more beneficial, and as we touched on, be really interesting to see with everyone fit, with Temple coming back in as well, to see Rice's philosophy, because he did when he first came into the club. He said he wanted to, he didn't want to play to try not to get beat. He wants to play to win, and I think this season will show if that's the case. I hope it is. I think it probably should be the case, and that should bring more of Mimno, who is, you can see, more of a someone who wants to influence the game with getting on the ball rather than having to chase an opposition.
I think that the Raith Rovers game on Saturday, both sides of that are perfect examples of what our season could be if we settle for what we have and the way we're approaching things. Players out of position, no depth, inexperience. We've quite clearly shown what that means. That could have been, we could have been 7 down before we got our first goal, and then with a bit of quality, with a bit of experience, you can see that we're perfectly capable. I mean, 4 goals in 25 minutes. So I think that that was a real eye opener of what we really could be, one extreme or the other.
Yeah, I think you see with the confidence as well. The players in the first half and when they started the second half, they seemed to just play with no confidence, head down, didn't want to look up, and make like put their foot on the ball or make the pass that was needed to make, and then you get a goal, a second goal, and it's just it does wonders. I think again it goes to back to Rice, is that fact that coming back to record such a result, they've not chucked the towel in. I think it says that they do want to play for the manager. And I've certainly heard about Bruce Anderson. He was a massive fan of Rice and what he did for him, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case for so many of these players. Because you look at it, I think we're going to might touch on it about Accies and their youth, the academy. It's certainly something that should be the club's identity. I think it's different to a lot of clubs in Scotland, and it's a great selling point. And I wouldn't be surprised if, say, down the line, Jamie Hamilton leaves, Lewis Smith leaves, potentially others, if they can kick on this season, and if they look back on it and talk about how much an influence Rice was on the training field.
I think everything you're saying there is spot on. I think the thing that frustrates me personally, and probably a few Accies fans will agree, is, like you say, we do have that academy and that is our identity, but we've never used that as an advantage to, like, for example, teams like Livingston don't have that kind of academy. They don't bring through the prospects. They make good signings. We are bringing players through. Why can't we do both? Why can't we mix that with proper experienced signings and have the advantage of also the luxury of bringing through our own? Whereas we use that to compensate for not making the signings. So that kind of comes under my point, is not making the most of the opportunity. Whereas, well, we've got quality coming through. We don't need to spend that money, because something that we've said is we've been in the SPL 7 seasons. That's 7 years of prize money. That's more than any team in the Championship will be making in that time. So it's something that I feel like we haven't capitalised on.
Yeah, there does. You talked about it there and earlier. There's something has to be said for Aki's recruitment over the last 7 years. I always felt when we were doing the podcast, and like the start of the season podcast, it got to Hamilton and you were so unsure. Like it was a case of come back to me on the 1st of September when the transfer window was closed, and you get a better idea of Hamilton, because you just knew to expect left field signings, and then whether they were going to be good. You knew very little about them, but at least by then you maybe seen a couple of games of them, that it did seem as if they were, I think it's been mentioned before, they were almost shopping in a different market to the other clubs in the Premiership. And
market.
that market always seemed to be what's left come the last few days or the last couple of weeks of the window. So it would have been good. It would be good to see if over the next week or so that you can get signings in, and basically Rice goes, right, this is my squad. It's got a mixture of experience with like say Easton, Templeton, to the extent Scotland Man, the youth players coming through, and a couple of players, kind of proven players, whether they are at the Premiership level dropping down on loan, or players who have been there and done it in the Championship.
I think that's what we touch on quite a lot of the time. Is Aki's main problem has been, since as far as I can remember anyway, is they're always so ill prepared. They always wait until something needs to happen rather than actually. So it's sort of preparing to fail, because they don't prepare, and they wait until we're crying out for a striker until it's 3 months into the season, or they wait until fans have cried out the full of the January transfer window and say, someone's coming. They wait until the last day to bring someone in. So it
it'd be interesting to know what's done between just January and like what forward planning is put in place for looking at players who are coming out of contracts. Like, okay, we could make a move for him, or
that's what we don't
get players snapped up early.
Right, it's just something we've never really done. And again, we've talked about it many times on here. It's frustrating, because again, I've mentioned them repeatedly now, but that's exactly the market that Livingston and Dundee always seem to work in. It's always the pre-contract signings, and it's the players excelling, usually in the league below. But I mean, kind of I mean, I've worked in offices my whole life, and it's usually surrounded by old firm fans, and people come up to me kind of second half of the season and say, well, there you go, new year, Accies are doing what they do, that's them finding their form now. But as an Accies fan, we know that's because it's taken up until now for our squad to actually gel, find who plays which position, and actually your mind does think, listen, if we were prepared, imagine what we could actually do for a season in this league. So it can be really frustrating.
Just before we move on, I do want to ask you, we got the opportunity to speak to Sean McWigan at the Wraith game, who looked a lot happier in the 60th minute than he did in the 90th. Wondering, has he said it in any group chats or anything about Aki since then?
You know what, So I watched the game. I was wanting to basically. I mean, why wouldn't I want to watch a 4-4 back? So I watched the game on Y-Scout. But also wanted to get Sean's view, because I know on Saturday. I mean, I think he was one of the few Raith Rovers fans who came out of that game still cock a hoop. I think he just thought it was absolutely great fun. He said it could have been 5-1, but it turned out 4-4. And he basically said he wasn't sure what to make of. He just said he's still not sure if Accies are any good or not, because they were basically so insipid, they were so disorganised for the first 60 minutes. Then you've got Templeton coming on, McMahon coming on, Ryan coming on. He does think that Templeton's going to be pretty going to be reliant on Templeton. So I think he just really, really enjoyed being back at the football, watching a manic game with both sets of fans at one point or another being raging at their team.
Just before we go into talk about Morton, we do have to ask your honest opinion. Where will Accies finish this season? We've got our own thoughts. I'm interested in what you think.
I did a prediction. I reckon between Kilmarnock and Dundee United for the top two spots. Then I'm going to go. It's difficult. It's one of those where it depends on the recruitment between now and the end of the window. At this moment in time, looking at the squads and comparing it to everyone else, fifth. If you bring in a right back, as long as you bring in a right back and a defensive midfielder, I'll probably look at that again. If you bring in a couple of forward-thinking players, then definitely we should be looking at the playoffs at least.
I mean, fifth in the playoffs is roughly basically what we said as well, isn't it? And I mean, don't get me wrong, when we were 4-0 down, it wasn't looking like I was looking a lot lower than that. But I'm glad that we're now able to look to the playoffs at least a little bit. On to our next game against Morton. Now, last season they were obviously one of the relegation contenders. They managed to scrape up. But where they kind of sit currently, I think they've got 15, 16 players on their books, so they are very short. Do you think Morton will be relegation contenders again this season? Do you think they'll be down that bottom end? Yeah, I do. It was the first weekend of the championship. As we mentioned, the championship was bonkers. Had me thinking back, like, it's really need to rethink my view on all of the lower leagues, just because some of the results were mental. But you look at the Greenock Morton last season, their squad building was so weird. They went most of the season with one goalkeeper, Aidan McAdams, who's went to Ayr United, as most of Morton's players have. He was fantastic. So they then replaced him with Jack Hamilton. Do I think that is a downgrade? Yes, I do. I would love Jack Hamilton to kind of prove a lot of people wrong, but I don't think he's as reliable as Aidan McAdams. I don't think he'll produce the spectacular saves, the match winning or game saving points that he will do. Alan Lithgow, brought in from Livingston. If they get the Alan Lithgow from 2 seasons ago, what a bloody signing. But he's not played too much for Livingston. Mark Russell from Finn Hearts, don't know much about him. And Gotsiuglu from Raith Rovers. Handy, is he going to score double figures? Probably not. So I really do fear for Morton at the moment. I think Hamilton should be going to this match thinking 3 points.
And what we're going to ask you is, we're going to ask you for your prediction, and we have to apologise. We've kind of stole the banker bust idea. We don't have an Eamon Brophy Lone Wolf trophy, so we've not got that, but we will have a prize at the end. So if you want to get involved, you're more than welcome to get involved every week. So what is your scoreline prediction for Hamilton versus Morton? Is it going to be another 10-2 Hamilton?
If I say 10-2 Hamilton, it'll be 0-0. So I'll go, I reckon 3-1 Accies.
3-1
Take that.
Just because I think, right, do you know if, like with McCann, McMahon Easton and Templeton, was it a case of they weren't fully fit?
Yeah.
As far as we were aware.
They've not done any pre-season, as far as you were aware.
And they were training on Wednesday. That was them returned to training on Wednesday and then featured on Saturday.
Yeah, that does ring a bell because I didn't really hadn't noticed them from the Premier Sports Cup. So I would imagine with a half, like 45 minutes, 30 minutes under their belt, another week's training, they'll be back in. And I think Accies will look a completely different side from those first 60 minutes at Starks Park. So I think Templeton, when you've potential of having Andy Ryan leading the line, Templeton and Lewis Smith linking up, and the thrust from deep of McMahon and Kieran McDonald, just a different proposition.
Absolutely. Joe, thank you very much for joining us, mate. We really appreciate your time. Thank you. You're welcome on. You're welcome on anytime in the future as well, man. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. That was a lot of fun.
And guys, before we finish up, Brandon, we were obviously able to attend the Wraith game. And a lot of what Joel said, I'm sure you'll agree with as well. So weak in midfield, lacking that. But the difference people like David Templeton and Andy Ryan and even Scott McMahon made, I mean, we were pretty depressed up until the 60th minute, and then it all changed. What were your thoughts on the Wraith game? Again, now you've had some time to think about it.
I mean, like I touched on after the game, we should never ever be allowing them to go 4-0 up. Everything, the midfield was just getting completely run over. Everything between the halfway line and our box, there was nothing there. And like I says, it was similar to that of the beginning of last season. It was until we've brought on we've made changes at half time, they didn't really impact that much until we actually got the one goal back. I thought Chucky and McMahon weren't that involved. You could see a bit of difference in how we were playing, but they weren't that involved until we got the one goal back and Terrace came on. It was just annoying, and like everybody said, it just shows you how the season can go. Yin or yang can go any way. If we've got a quality available and if we've got these players that are going to play, then yeah, we can go for the league. We can score 4 goals in 25 minutes. But if our squad is going to be so thin and we're going to be without, even if we've got a couple of their players back, still the squad's still so thin. So hopefully that's shown the sort of board that if you do get a few more quality players and if you do add a bit more depth to the squad, that's what we're capable of. You might get Accies can well and truly get back to the Premiership. It was just, what a way to start the Championship for each. I mean, you look back and it's genuinely crazy. No dull moments supporting Accies, but I don't think you'd have found a single person on this earth, never mind an Accies fan, that would have told you that's what would have happened on Saturday. Especially after the games we've had so far.
I mean, something I'm quite happy to see we were wrong about is from where we were sitting, we could see David Templeton going down to get warmed up, and we were saying to each other, don't risk him. Why are you risking him? I mean, we're 3-0 down at that point, 4-0 down, sorry. Why are we risking David Templeton? But as I said before, the difference just that one quality player can make coming on, getting 2 assists, was massive. David, Joel touched a lot on that midfield there, and I'm assuming you share his thoughts, just how easy it was to cut through the middle.
I mean, it was like Brandon's just said as well. It's your mind just ran away with you when it got to 4-0 and what this could be this year. Going from the quality, the assurance that we have in the middle of the park with somebody like Hakeem Odoffin, just the absolute dip in quality. It was, like you say, it was frightening. What you're thinking, what could be. And then when the more experienced men came on, if anything, that was frustrating at the same time when we got the draw at the end, because you're like we've said throughout this podcast, preparation. It's all about, if we were prepared, we could have hit the ground running. It was really concerning looking at the way it was unfolding. Like I said, it was slicing through us repeatedly. We got a bit lucky that it was only 4. Hats off. I don't think it's lucky that we came back. I don't think you can say scoring 4 goals in 25 minutes is a lucky comeback. It's fully deserved, but you should never be in that position. I think one thing that we need to give credit to, I mean, when we talk about signings and reaction to signings, we said that Andy Ryan was a mixed bag. People saw the potential there. People saw what he had been as well. So, I mean, that's 3 goal involvements and some very short appearances. I think he looks really promising. So, that's definitely a positive.
I think it was just a refreshing to see a striker like that. It's not something we've had in a while. I know when obviously Bruce Anderson came in, he sort of gave us that sort of kick initially, but to actually see a player that's ours and a striker that's ours sort of turn inside as casual as you like, rattle it in the top corner. No, it was nice to see, and hopefully that's just the first league goal of many to come for Chucky, and hopefully he's okay injury wise, because if that he's came on, he's made a difference, and yeah, the same with the rest of the players. We just need to keep them fit and hope that the club bring in a few players now that we've made money off Odoffin. We don't know how much we've made off him, but we need to reinvest it, because if we want to push on, we've shown that we've got the capabilities. We just need a bigger squad, and we need more quality in the squad as well.
And one of those players that it looks as if we are going to invest some of that money in is Miko Vertranen.
I wish it was Vertonghen. He'd shoot our defence up.
is Miko Vertranen, and it's somebody that, again, not afraid to say, didn't know much about him until I saw this link and started looking into him. Lots of praise from our both fans, who said he was really, really sturdy, just nice and tidy in the middle. You know, tidied up any threat that was in there, similar to Hakeem Odoffin. But as Joel said, only get 9-10 games before getting recalled. So experience in the Championship, and it's a signing that it interests me. You know, it's we've said we want a midfielder. Brian Rice said to us after the game, Brandon, I don't know if you picked up on this, but he just seemed a lot more confident when we're getting to get a midfielder than we were a forward. And he said, we're definitely getting a midfielder.
Definitely getting a defensive midfielder. I mean, he was very adamant, and that's the first time that, although he has said for the past few weeks that this is what we want, this is what we're going to get, when he said that, he was adamant. You could tell that there was definitely something there. And as far as I'm aware, obviously we've had this link. I think it's a done deal. And like yourself, I'm very intrigued by it, because the boy started his career off at Everton as a youth player. He's then Aberdeen have signed him. Aberdeen are only going to sign him if there's no something there. He's played with Everton through his youth career. Big team. He's moved to Aberdeen. They saw something in him. And if we're being honest, Aberdeen, that's a position Aberdeen have had so many good players in the past few years. So for them to actually sign him and think that there's going to be an opportunity for them there, and to still keep them on their books there, and think, give him a new deal because there's still an opportunity, despite having your Lewis Ferguson's, your Dylan McGeoch's, your Ross McCrory's, Scott Brown now, etc., and players in the past years, Niall McGinn. There's obviously something there that Aberdeen have sought, and he's just not had the opportunity yet. So maybe he comes to Accies and we sit him down in a new deal. And I don't know much about him. I've never saw him, but on paper, it's a good signing on paper, and hopefully we get it done and he fits in well.
And something that Accies fans have picked up on, David, is there was a bit of confusion in the paper about whether there was going to be a loan signing, whether it was going to be a permanent signing. It needs to be a permanent signing, let's be honest. We can't keep going on with these loan players, especially in the Championship.
Definitely. I mean, I think obviously we're in a lower league than we have been in the last 7, but I can see a change in the way we're doing our business. I think we're starting to show we've maybe learned a few lessons. Like we've talked about, is stability in the squad and having to take up until Christmas to establish a team and total rebuilds every year. I mean, Andy Ryan, 2-year deal, positive signing so far. Kieran McDonald, 2-year deal, very positive signing so far. We need to start planning ahead. So for me, this has to be a permanent. I would be looking to keep the loans to a minimum, especially, like you say, we really need strikers in. I agree that you might get, because we're a championship team, we might get a better calibre of striker on loan from maybe an English team, but you can't be looking to refresh your striking options every year. We need to, like you say, how much money it is we got from Odoffin, we don't know, but we know it's good money. It's enough to go out there and get ourselves our own striker, someone to invest in, someone who will carry us, a talisman, like we've said throughout, someone that can get us the 10 goals a season. I don't know why, but I'm optimistic. I'd like to think that we are working towards something, because the approach hasn't worked in the past, and the signs are showing that it could be changing.
I think what if we want to go for it and we want to reinvest this money wisely, I think what we need is, let's say Vertranen signed. So we need Vertranen, we need another midfielder / right back, and 2 forward players. I think that's what we need. And I don't think, I think the board have saw what we're capable of if we have players there at our dispense. So I think the money we've brought in for Odoffin, I don't think they would have been fully expecting to have that. So that's an addition. That's money that hasn't been there. They need to reinvest it. We've showed what we can do. If they reinvest that wisely, they'll get us back to the Premiership. Because for what I've saw other teams, and although Joe has said, Killeen, Dunfermline, there's not going to be that much in this league this year. Everybody's capable of beating everybody, so it's it'll be a close league, and if we invest the Odoffin money wisely, then yeah.
I think more importantly, what you just said there is they've seen what we can do. They've also seen what will happen if they don't do anything. So if anything, we should be thankful that we got that 65 minutes out of system first game of the season. I actually think that'll be positive going into Morton as well. I think that some of these guys might have been nervous going into this season, with guys like Lewis Smith and Jamie Hamill actually having expectation on their shoulders for the first time. So I think that closing half hour on Saturday is going to give us some confidence, and I'm hoping we're going to hit the ground running on Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, to look ahead to Saturday, I'm not going to lie, I fully expect Accies to win. Maybe not necessarily comfortably, but I do expect it. I think Morton will be relegation contenders again. I think they'll be down the bottom. And I mean, as Joe said as well, now that people like David Templeton and that have got some minutes under their belt, I've got more training time in. I'm hoping
they'll be out for the season now.
Well, there was one moment, wasn't there, against Wraith after a tackle, and he started holding his ankle. We were going, oh, fuck. But thankfully he's all right. But I am fully expecting a win. May not be comfortable, but I am fully expecting Accies to get a result. Brandon, what are you expecting from this weekend's game?
I mean, it just depends who's fit. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think you go with the same team that started anyway on Saturday if players are fit. But it's hard to make a judgment when you don't know who's fit and who's available and who's there at your dispense. So you can't really know until you have that information. I was hoping in Rice's press conference they would have maybe shed a wee bit of light on that, but we don't really know who's available, and we've not signed MD as of yet. So it's a tough one. I think they've maybe realised, they would have realised from Saturday that some things won't work. And maybe some things will work. So it's just about who's available. I think Scott McMahon will be not fully fit, but I think Scott McMahon will start. And I think Andy Ryan will start. I don't think Templeton will start. I think that's too risky. But yeah, I'm excited for a home league match for a change. So it'll be interesting to see how we go at it.
And as we're doing all season, we'll end with our score predictions put into our league table. Nobody got full points last week. Nobody unbelievably predicted a 4 each draw. There was plenty of people who got a point though for predicting a draw. So we'll give it this week. I said it would be comfortable. I don't think it'll be super comfortable though. I'm going to go with a 2-0 Accies. And I'm going to go even further and I'm going to say Andy Ryan's going to get another.
I'm going to make an arse of myself. I'm going to say we're going to win 3-0.
2-1 Accies.
2-1 Accies. All right. Well, that's our score predictions. Of course, let us know yours down in the comments and, of course, over on social media as well. Thank you guys for watching this week's episode of the podcast. Thank you once again to Joel Sked for coming on, and we will see you after the game.